They laughed when the Marine commander asked her rank. She smiled calmly, and then she answered, 4-star general. The laughter died instantly. A decorated Marine commander lost his footing, and the room fell into a silence so heavy it felt like war had just been declared. What none of them understood was this: she didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten anyone. She didn't need to, because the moment she spoke her rank, everything changed. Intro: United War. Welcome back to United War, the channel where untold military stories, hidden authority, and moments of absolute reckoning come to life. Today's story is about arrogance meeting reality, about a woman underestimated because she chose silence over ego, and about a Marine commander who learned, in the most shocking way possible, that true power never announces itself. This is not a story about humiliation. It's a story about respect. And it begins on a Marine base with a joke that went too far. The setting: the conference hall at Camp Pendleton buzzed with casual confidence. Senior Marine officers filled the room: colonels, lieutenant colonels, commanders with decades of service stitched into their uniforms. The mood was relaxed, confident, almost playful. A joint operations briefing was scheduled. New oversight personnel had arrived, and no one expected surprises. Then she walked in. No medals on display, no entourage, no dramatic entrance. Just a woman in a perfectly pressed service uniform, posture flawless, expression calm, eyes observant. She took a seat near the back, and just like that, she vanished into the background. The misjudgment. Colonel Marcus Reed, a respected Marine commander with 3 deployments and a reputation for sharp wit, scanned the room. He noticed her, not because she stood out, but because she didn't. No chatter, no ego, no attempt to command attention. Reed leaned toward another officer and muttered, "New liaison, I guess." As the briefing began, Reed took the floor. "All right, before we start," he said with a grin, "let's go around and introduce ourselves, rank and role." The room chuckled lightly. Names were called, ranks announced, confidence flowed. Then it reached her. Reed glanced at her fileless clipboard and smirked. "And you, ma'am, what's your rank?" A pause. She stood, slowly, every movement precise, every gesture controlled. She didn't rush, didn't react to the tone. She simply met his eyes. The joke. Reed chuckled. "Let me guess," he said lightly, arms crossed. "Captain, maybe major?" A few officers smiled. No malice, just assumption. She didn't smile back. "I'm here to observe," she said calmly. Reed laughed softly. "Well then, for the sake of protocol, what rank are we observing?" He expected embarrassment, deflection, a polite dodge. Instead, she answered. The moment. 4-star general. 3 words, clear, measured, final. The room didn't react at first. Then, chairs scraped, a pen hit the floor, breaths stopped. Colonel Reed's smile vanished. He took a step back, then another, his face drained of color. "No," he whispered. His knees buckled. 2 officers lunged forward as Reed collapsed into a chair, stunned, clutching the table for balance. "General?" someone breathed. She nodded once, not proudly, not arrogantly, simply truthfully. The aftershock. The room exploded into movement. Officers jumped to attention. Salutes snapped upward in unison. The sound was thunderous. She returned the salute, slow, controlled. "At ease," she said quietly. No one moved, because no one had expected this. No one had imagined that the quiet woman in the back of the room outranked everyone present, including the base command. Who she really was. Her name was General Evelyn Cross, Supreme Strategic Authority, Joint Chiefs Oversight, Operational Command Influence spanning multiple theaters. She had walked through war rooms where decisions shaped nations, and today she had walked into a Marine briefing room unnoticed, until someone joked. The commander's realization. Colonel Reed sat frozen, humiliation replaced by disbelief. "General Cross," he said weakly, standing again. "My apologies. I had no idea." She raised a hand. "This isn't about apology," she said calmly. Her eyes swept the room. "This is about assumption. No anger, no scolding, just truth, and that made it worse. You judged silence as weakness. You mistook humility for insignificance." She paused. "And that," she said softly, "is how wars are lost." The room was utterly silent. End of Part 1, cliffhanger. General Cross sat down, calm, composed, unmoved, but the Marine commander's world had just collapsed, and he had no idea that what came next would test his command, his pride, and his future in the Corps. Because this wasn't a visit, it was an evaluation, and the real reckoning was just beginning.
The briefing room had never felt smaller. Every Marine officer stood rigid, backs straight, eyes forward, but their minds were racing. The presence of General Evelyn Cross had sucked the air from the room. Colonel Marcus Reed adjusted his uniform slowly, hands trembling just enough to betray him. He had commanded Marines under fire. He had faced enemy artillery without blinking. Yet nothing prepared him for this. A 4-star general sitting quietly in his briefing room. General Cross observed them in silence, not to intimidate, not to assert dominance. She was watching how they reacted when authority arrived unannounced. The evaluation begins. "At ease," General Cross said again. This time they obeyed. She stood and walked to the front, heels clicking softly against the floor. No rush, no theatrics. "I won't take much of your time," she said evenly. "This is not a reprimand session." Colonel Reed swallowed hard. "This is an observation." Those words landed harder than any punishment. "I've reviewed your unit's combat record," she continued. "Your operational success rate is impressive." Reed allowed himself a breath. "But leadership," she added, turning her gaze directly toward him, "isn't measured only by results." The room leaned inward, listening. The uncomfortable question. General Cross stopped by the digital map. "Colonel Reed," she said calmly, "why did you assume my rank?" The question was simple. The answer was not. Reed straightened, choosing his words carefully. "Ma'am, I believed rank should be identified early to maintain order. A safe answer, a rehearsed answer." She nodded slowly. "And yet," she said, "you turned it into a joke." The room went still again. Reed's jaw tightened. "That tells me something. Not about your humor, but about your default perception of authority." She stepped closer. Real authority does not announce itself. A lesson from war. General Cross gestured toward the map. "During a classified operation 12 years ago," she said, "I entered a forward command post dressed as a civilian advisor." Some officers exchanged glances. "The commanding officer ignored me for 6 hours until the mission collapsed." She paused. Not because he lacked skill, but because he refused to listen to a voice that didn't match his expectations. Her gaze returned to Reed. That officer no longer commands. The message was clear. The room shifts. The Marines no longer saw a woman. They saw consequence. They saw careers weighed and measured silently. General Cross turned to the group. "Each of you," she said, "will be evaluated over the next 48 hours." A murmur rippled through the room. "Not on tactics," she continued, "but on conduct, judgment, and respect." She looked back at Reed. "Especially you." No anger, just fact. Reed's internal battle. Reed nodded sharply. "Yes, ma'am." But inside, his mind was spiraling. Every laugh, every assumption, every careless moment replayed itself. He had prided himself on discipline, yet he had failed the most basic principle of command: respect before rank. General Cross turned away from him. "Tomorrow morning," she said, "we begin field observation." She paused at the door. "And Colonel?" Reed snapped to attention. "Yes, ma'am." She looked over her shoulder. "Collapse happens fast. Recovery takes humility." Then she left. The aftermath. The door closed. No one spoke. Reed exhaled slowly and sank into his chair. A lieutenant finally whispered, "Sir, a 4-star general." Reed nodded. "I know." His voice was steady now, but something inside him had cracked. For the first time in his career, he realized that command wasn't guaranteed. It was earned every single day. End of Part 2. Cliffhanger. As night fell over the base, one truth settled heavily over Colonel Reed. General Cross wasn't there to humiliate him. She was there to decide whether he was still fit to lead Marines. And tomorrow, she would push him harder than any enemy ever had.
At 0500 hours, Camp Pendleton stirred as Marines assembled on the training grounds. Boots hit concrete in perfect rhythm. Breath steamed in the cold air. Colonel Marcus Reed stood at the front of his formation, posture firm, expression unreadable. But inside, the pressure was crushing, because today wasn't a drill. Today, General Evelyn Cross would observe him in the field, where command is exposed and ego has nowhere to hide. A black USV rolled to a stop. The door opened. General Cross stepped out. No fanfare, no escort, just presence, the watchful eye. She positioned herself slightly behind the formation, not above it, not outside it, inside it. Reed noticed immediately. Most high-ranking officers observed from safety. She didn't. "Begin the exercise," she said calmly. Reed issued the order. The unit moved, tight, disciplined, fast. On the surface, everything was perfect, but General Cross wasn't watching formations. She was watching behavior. The first crack. The scenario escalated, simulated casualties, communications disruption, time pressure. A junior Marine hesitated during a maneuver. Reed's voice sharpened. "Move, damn it!" The Marine flinched and rushed, making a second mistake. General Cross's eyes narrowed. She made a note. Reed felt it, that instinctive urge to dominate under stress, the same instinct that had made him joke yesterday. The moment of choice. Minutes later, the same Marine froze again, overwhelmed. Reed opened his mouth, then stopped. He remembered her words. Collapse happens fast. Recovery takes humility. He stepped forward, lowered his voice. "Look at me," he said firmly. "Breathe. You know this." The Marine steadied himself, executed perfectly. General Cross watched without comment. The true test. The exercise continued until chaos peaked. Radio failure, conflicting intel, time slipping away. Reed faced a choice: override his team and assert absolute control, or trust them. He chose trust. "Sergeant," he said, "you have the call." The sergeant executed a risky but correct maneuver. Mission success. Silence followed. Reed waited. So did everyone else. General Cross steps in. "Formation," she said. Marines snapped to attention. She walked the line slowly, studying faces. "This unit is skilled, but skill is fragile without respect." She stopped in front of Reed. "Yesterday, you saw authority. Today, I saw leadership." Reed held his breath. "You corrected yourself under pressure," she continued. "That is not weakness." She leaned closer. "That is command." The private word. Later, away from the unit, General Cross spoke quietly. "You were tested," she said, "and you learned." Reed nodded. "I misjudged you, ma'am." She shook her head. No, you misjudged yourself. Those words hit deeper than any reprimand. As the sun climbed higher, one question remained unanswered. Would learning be enough? Because leadership isn't proven in a single day, and tomorrow, General Cross would deliver her final judgment.
The bass felt different. Not louder, not quieter, heavier. Colonel Marcus Reed stood alone outside the command building before sunrise, hands clasped behind his back. The ocean breeze carried the distant sound of aircraft engines and flag halyards snapping against metal poles. This was the last day. No drills, no simulations. Only judgment. A black sedan pulled up. General Evelyn Cross stepped out. She wore her full 4-star uniform now, unmistakable, undeniable. Sunlight caught the silver stars on her shoulders. Every Marine within sight froze. Salutes snapped. She returned them calmly. "Colonel Reed," she said, "walk with me." The walk. They moved side by side across the parade ground. No aides, no witnesses close enough to hear. "I've reviewed everything," General Cross said. "Your record, your unit, your performance." Reed nodded. "I won't pretend yesterday erased the mistake. It didn't." His jaw tightened. "But," she added, "it revealed something more important." She stopped walking. "You were willing to change." She turned to face him fully. "Most commanders break when authority challenges their ego." Reed met her eyes. "You didn't." The final verdict. General Cross reached into her folder. Reed's chest tightened. "Colonel Marcus Reed," she said formally. "Effective immediately." He braced himself. "Effective immediately, your command is retained." The words hit like a shockwave. Reed exhaled sharply. But she wasn't finished. "You will also be assigned to joint leadership development," she continued. "You will teach." Reed blinked. "Teach what, ma'am?" She stepped closer. "How to listen." The public moment. Later that morning, the entire unit assembled. Marines stood in formation under the rising sun. General Cross stood before them, Colonel Reed at her side. "This command was evaluated," she said clearly, "not to punish, but to reveal." She turned to Reed. "Colonel Marcus Reed made a mistake." A ripple moved through the formation. He also corrected it. She faced the Marines again. "That," she said, "is leadership." Then something unexpected happened. General Cross raised her hand and saluted him. Gasps rippled through the ranks. Reed returned the salute, stunned, steady, humbled. The lesson. General Cross addressed the unit one last time. "Rank is not always visible," she said. "Authority does not always announce itself." She paused. "But respect," she said firmly, "must always come first." Her eyes scanned the formation. "If you remember that," she concluded, "you will never be caught unprepared." The ending. As she departed the base, Marines watched silently. Colonel Reed stood taller than he ever had. Not because of pride, but because he understood something now. Leadership wasn't about being right. It wasn't about being loud. It wasn't even about being in charge. It was about recognizing power even when it arrives quietly. And on that day, a Marine commander didn't just survive humiliation, he earned respect. Closing. United War. This is United War, where hidden authority, real consequences, and unforgettable moments of leadership collide. If this story moved you, share it, because respect saves careers and arrogance destroys them.